introduce them.
Thank you very much. I just want to acknowledge the Noongar Wadjuk country of which we're standing on today, and the elders past and present, and the future emerging. Third party appeal rights. This is in reply. I guess this is a debate, so if I take it in the debating spirit, third party appeal rights are good for business and good for neighbours. So listen up, Liberal Party. You are the ringleaders. The Liberal Party is the ringleader for the campaign against third party appeal rights. My name's Julie Matheson. I'm a former Subiaco council, one of the founders of Scrap The Daps, a campaign that started in 2012, and founder and convener of the Western Australia Party. I have been campaigning for third-party appeal rights since 2012, and I'm not going to stop. The development disasters around Western Australia started with the Liberal Party's planning reform from 2008 to 2017. The Labor Party adopted those policies and put them on steroids using developer donations. The Liberal Party and the Nationals, at every opportunity, they had every opportunity to stop the Labor Party for these past 4 years using the balance of power in the Legislative Council, but there was no willingness to do so. The Liberal Party voted every time with the government on third-party appeal rights, that is to stop it. And we have a poster here on third-party appeal rights, and the Honourable Charles Smith brought third-party appeal rights to the Parliament a number of times, and the Liberal Party voted with the Labor Party. They had every opportunity to vote for third-party appeal rights, but they didn't. One thing is for sure, after 13 years of Liberal and Labor planning policies, Perth is no better off, with a crisis in public and private housing, established suburbs ruined with blocks of tissue box developments and empty investment properties. Liberal Party, you need to listen up. If you wonder why you're going to be smashed at the elections, you are no opposition. We need an opposition in Parliament. Yes. So, there are compelling reasons for third-party appeal rights set out by Judge Christine Trenorden, Senior Judge for the Environment, Resources and Development Court in South Australia. She wrote an awesome paper on third-party appeal rights. So let's unpack the fairy tales and the urban myths, some of them which you heard here tonight, put up by the Liberal Party and the National Party because they're in cahoots together. So the first fairy tale is vocal minorities will dominate the planning process. This is not true. There is a strong culture of third-party appeal rights in Queensland, Victoria, Tasmania. Someone out there. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that phone call. Maybe it's Mum. Okay, third-party appeal rights in Tasmania and South Australia. The other fairy tale is it weakens local democracy. This is not true. It stops corruption of the planning process, and we know that corruption is rife in planning. The other reason for not supporting third-party appeal rights is it deters investment in local community. That's also been said in Parliament. Not true. Much ill feeling will be overcome by giving both applicants and objectors the right of appeal. Now, the other one is costs and delays. Third-party appeal rights will cause costs and delays. Simply not true. That is so wrong. There is no evidence of third-party appeal rights abuse in South Australia. Since 1993, approximately 18% of all appeals were undertaken by third-party appeal rights. A massive 82% were put up by developers, adding to their own costs and their own delays. This is not the community delaying their own costs and causing them delays. This is themselves. They are doing it because they're trying to breach the system. They're trying to fudge it. And we're sick of it. We're sick of them fudging it. The other thing it says is reinforces adversarial approach. That's not true either. Third-party appeal rights actually improves planning process through detailed local knowledge. Knowledge not necessarily held by planning authorities or the developer. Local knowledge that is sitting here right before us. Your local knowledge is what will get everyone a great outcome for business and for the neighbours. And our last one is it creates unmanageable administrative burden. Not true. It's a means for checking on the planning authorities that they're not acting capriciously or arbitrarily. So, ladies and gentlemen, you have an opportunity to vote. Vote this election to send a message to both Liberal and Labor Party that they've got the same policies with the same outcome. They both invented this planning framework in 2008. They continue to perpetuate it. I don't trust them one bit to change it, but I do trust the Honourable Charles Smith, and I do trust the Honourable Alison Xamon. I do trust those two people who have been voting in favour of third-party appeal rights. But you cannot beat the Labor, Nationals and Liberals who are so against it. So tonight, have your voice and vote and support the parties, especially the West Australia Party, on introducing third-party appeal rights in Western Australia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julie. Yep. Honourable Alison Xamon.
Thank you so much. I'd like to begin by acknowledging you at a meeting on Roger Butcher and paying my respect to the elders past, present and emerging. For those of you who don't know me, and I do know a number of you, but my name is Alison Xamon and I'm the Greens member for the North Metropolitan region and also the leader of the Greens. So I'm really happy to be here tonight, and I'm pleased because I didn't think I was going to get an opportunity to speak, so I'm very glad that I'm able to do that now. Now I've been told there's a timer. So, I was very interested when I saw the people that came up because a number of these groups I've either worked with or have been working around the issue, so that was really pleasing. And also there's many others across North Metro that aren't even here that could have been mentioned as well. So I imagine that we're going to hear from Keith Cotlow as well and hear about some of that stuff, but a range of other things. It has been a recurrent theme of my term in Parliament. Dealing with local issues has been distress and concern about planning, or about what has happened with planning and how it's impacting on people's lives and how it's impacting on people's homes. There is no doubt that this is a massive issue. It's been a massive issue this term of government, but it's also been a massive issue in my previous term of Parliament when I was the member for East Metropolitan Region under the Barnett government. And so we are seeing a recurrent theme about a system of planning that is broken and a system of planning that alienates and distresses and local communities and the people who live in it. And I would have to disagree that I think it is weighted far too. I'm with Liam Bartlett on this one. It is far too weighted towards developers, and I'll get to my thinking about why that is the case. Now, to be very clear, the Greens love good planning. We are fans of well-done urban infill, if it's done properly. So urban infill, if it's done properly, means that people have an opportunity to age in place in the communities that they love as they get older and they need to downsize. It means that children get a chance to be able to move back into the areas they grew up in. So these are good things. We want to make sure that people have housing options in communities so that they can stay in place in the communities that they love. You can have it done in such a way that you ensure you've got appropriate green spaces, that you are protecting your tree canopy, that you are protecting local heritage. that you've actually got the facilities that you need. So there are ways that you can do that. But the planning system as it's outlined at the moment is not achieving that end. Absolutely not achieving that end at all. What we're seeing instead is that communities are being consistently overrun by unilateral decisions by particularly state government at state government level. And that is something that we should be very, very concerned about. I'm very distressed when I have spoken to people who have participated in good faith with their local planning designs. I think about Subiaco in Netherlands, for example, who, just off the top of my head, who did a lot of work to try to meet the density targets, that talked about where they wanted to have appropriate development, these sorts of things, only to have the state government come in and unilaterally go over the top of it. So people who had engaged in good faith, who had attended community meetings and who had worked with their local councils and who had come up with good plans, only to find that the state government would come in and just override them entirely. And that is absolutely disgraceful. So thank you. And so a little bit about where the Greens have stood consistently on this. The Greens opposed the introduction of DAPs and have been opposed to JDAPs. Now, and if anyone would like to know, see my speech in Parliament from a million years ago when the DAPs were first introduced, I got up and I spoke about why I opposed the DAPs. It's in Parliament, it's on the Hansard, it's on the record. It's not me just standing here and going, oh, we have a position. Nope, I'm on the public record about this. And that's because what DAPs do is they actually alienate the community. They actually remove the capacity for communities to have their say, particularly through the democratic process of local government. Okay, local government members are elected and they should have a say. They are there to be able to represent the will of their community, and what DAPs do is they actually override that, and the JDAPs have actually have aggravated that. And Julie was right. Like, this is something that has been agreed by both Labor and Liberal. So there has effectively been a consensus in terms of how this is working out. Now, third-party right of appeal. I'm so glad you went before me, Julie, because she outlined perfectly exactly all the fallacies around third-party right of appeal and why we actually need it. For those of you who don't know anything about my background, I'm a lawyer. I actually I never practiced in planning law, but I studied planning law, and I actually did an entire study project around third-party right of appeal, and it works. That is why we have it in every single other state of Australia. So this idea that somehow WA has to be so unique that we can't have third-party right of appeal is absurd. Absolutely absurd. Of course we need to have it. And it is something I will want to say that the Greens in Parliament have been calling for ever since the mid-90s, since the Honourable Jim Scott was there. So we have been consistent, it's been a part of our policy platform, it's been something that we have raised repeatedly, and basically, well, I mean, even in this term of Parliament, when I've raised it, but I've been mocked. I don't care about being mocked, I'm pretty thick-skinned, but I've been mocked by particularly the Honourable Alan McTiernan, who's had this fervent passion to never have third-party right of appeal. Why? She says, why would you want that? Anyway, so I'm not going to go into all the reasons why you need it, because Julie articulated that really well. Thank you, Julie. I appreciate that. But I do want to say some other things about what has happened most recently. And I'm wondering how many of you are aware of the COVID planning laws that came through at all. Okay, so the COVID planning laws were basically rushed through Parliament, like pretty much all the COVID legislation. And the Greens opposed it. I opposed it. If anyone would like to speak to me afterwards, I'm happy to send you my speech, because I have made a very clear connection between the risks of corruption around and the COVID planning laws as well. It was supported by both the Liberal Party and the Labor Party and the Nationals as well, I'm sad to say. But the Greens absolutely not only opposed it but spoke out against it. Now, those COVID planning laws have given an extraordinary amount of power to Rita Saffioti as the planning minister to be able to override the planning laws, including, and it's actually explicitly in the legislation, to render legal planning measures which would otherwise be deemed illegal. That's what's in the legislation. So an extraordinary grab for power that goes all the way to 2025. Not a brick doesn't need to necessarily even be laid until 2027, and all in the name of economic stimulus. Well, we're talking a lot of power for a very long period of time. If any of you would like to talk to me about that later, feel free. But I want to come down to what I think is some of the key problems here within Western Australia and what I think goes to the core of this. The Greens are stalwarts on this, have gone to the election with this, and will continue to carry on about this. We need to ban developer donations. They need to be banned throughout this. Now, they're already banned in 2 states. They're banned in New South Wales, they're banned in Queensland. Now, how did that come about? It came about because their various corruption bodies discovered that there was a direct link between developer donations and decisions being made by government. So that's why that came about. And it seems a little bit sort of not quite believable to think that that isn't something that's potentially happening here as well, quite frankly. And even if it's not happening, there's always the perception that it's happening. And even if there's not the perception, there is a principle called clientelism. And if any of you don't know what that is, that basically is the concept which recognises that even if governments may not overtly make a decision in favour of someone that they deem to be a client, i.e. a developer who's donated, we have built this city, then they will may have an unconscious bias towards that. So it's a genuine risk, and it's something that we need to have reform on. And around that, we need transparency around our donations laws. I'm really glad that Three Oceans was raised as an example, because Three Oceans, we only found out that Three Oceans had actually donated to the Labor Party because they declared it, because you couldn't find it in the Electoral Commission donations, because we don't have that level of transparency. And one of the things I want to point out as well is that I have introduced a bill, I did it under Barnett, and I've done it under the last government, to actually ban cash for access. So to make it an offence under the Electoral Act for ministers to meet with anybody for cash that they are for